I'm really happy to be here. I have such a fondness for our centers, for our peeps in our centers, and to see all of you here today is just so heartwarming. And all those things that Cliff said, it's like, yeah, it's just life, you know. I think he gave half of my talk. But I am truly honored to be here today and to get to share with you. So I want to jump right in. How many of you can relate to this? And what this is a job description for a spiritual seeker. And it says, full-time position available for person who strives to be mindful and aware of the deeper context of life. Must be curious, open-minded, and willing to change. Reverence for creation and personal humility will be a necessity. Study, prayer, and meditative practice are expectations. Compassion and kindness are requirements. Starting date, now. Salary, 0. Benefits, unlimited. And I have a hunch, most of us here already applied and got the job. So I really do want to begin by just bringing to your minds what a beautiful demonstration you are of spiritual community. The people that are willing to be here to do that kind of work in heart and in mind doesn't come along every day. And I'm not sure that you know this, but your center, in one way, shape, or form, has been sharing New Thought principles for over 100 years. So what you've done here and what has been done prior to you coming, the lives that have been touched, the hearts that have been blessed, is powerful. And 100 years of the transformation of consciousness is truly a testament to you and to allowing Spirit's good work to pour through you. And I wonder myself about longevity. And I'm wondering sometimes if it doesn't get the true credence, the cred that it deserves. So to be around for as long as the center has been here means a ton of commitment, of consciousness, of wisdom, and of love. And I think particularly in our kind of here today, gone tomorrow world, it's something that just doesn't come along very often. And I want to say I do have a personal love for longevity. As Cliff mentioned, Ken and I were in our church that we founded for 30 years. I am the treasurer of the archives, which is about nothing except old stuff. I drive a 14-year-old car. I mean, old is good in my world. I also just wanted to bring to mind how much I admire one of your former ministers here, Dr. Sue Rubin. And I think she's like maybe 97, 98, something like that. And there she is, still posting Science Mind Wisdom on Facebook. I mean, that is fantastic. And so here you have over 10 decades of spiritual community. But I don't want to just look backward. I also want to make a call forward. And so I want to plant a seed today and ask every person here and every person online, what legacy will you carry into the future, into the next 100 years of this spiritual family? And I am truly reminded of that old analogy of the rope. You know, one strand all by itself really can't do very much. But all the strands gathered together can hold a lot and have a lot of strength. And so your strands support each other and the movement of the science of mind in teaching principle and practicing love through all the great things that you're doing. And so I just really want to acknowledge and bring to your minds that the value of being together in spiritual family. It means so much. Now, I will admit, I am a tad nervous being here today. Cliff mentioned I'm retired, and it's been like well over 2.5 years since that happened, and that was the last time I gave a talk. So I'm feeling a little bit rusty. And when Cliff called me and asked me to come, he said, I would just love for you to come and talk to our community. He said, I want them to hear from the chair of the Leadership Council. And he went on, you're so great, you're so heartfelt. Our people would just be so excited for you to come. And I'm like, Cliff, you make it hard to say no, but you're also making me very nervous. You know how it is when you expect something to be so great and then maybe it's not that, that a person recommends a movie and you will just love it. And you watch it and you're like, it was all right. So I actually said, thanks, Cliff, but no thanks. And I'm sure y'all know Cliff. He asked again, and eventually I did give him a yes. But I want to tell you that yes wasn't really because he was persuasive, which he was, but it was inside of me, even though I tried to deny it with old thoughts of, I'm too rusty, I'm not good enough, all of that. In truth, there was a yes in my heart. And so even though I did try and talk myself out of it, I'd remembered that I promised myself that I would not do that anymore, because I am deep in the practice of knowing, remembering, and living, to the best of my ability, that yes is my heart, gut, spirit, guidance, yes. And that's what I want to talk about today, about living from our at-one-ment with our divine nature, with our direct unity with all that is. And I want to share that for me, this is truly about oneness and unity. And for me, that is different than our connection with our divine nature. Because when you think about it, that word connection actually connotes bringing together two separate things. So that would be more like spirit and me. But what I want to talk about is spirit as me, complete oneness. And so this brings me back to my yes to coming here and trusting my heart. Now, I have noticed, and maybe you have too, that there are very few things that I have said yes to that I've regretted. However, there are more than a few things I have said no to that have actually become my list of regrets. Anyone? Now, have some of those yeses turned out in some kind of weird and wonky ways? Yes, but still, I have not regretted them. The poet Rumi said, as you start to walk on the way appears. And I have found that to be more true than sometimes I would wish at times. Because if you've noticed, you actually have to say yes and move and start the walk before that way appears. And that can be scary for sure. But I have noticed that the way shows up far more clearly when I'm in alignment with my highest self rather than when I'm reacting out of my smaller self, my fears, the outside world. Now, all of this has been great learning for me, partly because of my own very human nature. So I have always been a person who likes to think and figure things out. I am an information nut. I love to do research. Before I make any decisions, I like to get as much data as I can. And I have a real-life example. So my husband Ken and I had a new patio deck installed this summer. Now, before we could begin, I needed to get no less than 3 quotes. I needed to research what kind of materials were best. I had to research all the different installation companies that there are in Kelowna. I checked their references. I spent a lot of time doing a lot of research. And in the meantime, Ken who says to give you his love. Ken says, I met this guy, and we really resonated. He gave me a great quote, and literally, while I'm still on my computer trying to get in touch with people, of course, the deck is done. And a long way to say that even though it has not been my first nature, paying attention and trusting my heart and my gut in oneness with the divine is truly where I am these days. And I remember that it is a practice and not a perfect. Now, as Cliff mentioned, I was elected as chair of the Leadership Council. And it's the chair, the executive director, and the spiritual leader that make up the executive team of CSL. Now, some of you might not be aware that Centers for Spiritual Living, CSL, is our greater organization of which this center is a proud member. And it's made up of maybe about 450 international communities, focus ministries, and study groups. And the Leadership Council is very much like your board of trustees here, which I know your beautiful Enid is your president. So these are the people who are responsible for the financial end of things, of governance, and the chair is like the president. So a little bit of an aside. Cliff also mentioned this. So I retired from CSL Kelowna in 2023. And there were Ken and I. We were traveling, just relaxing, sort of goofing around, and it was a lot of fun. But like Cliff alluded to, I started to feel sort of like an untethered balloon. I wasn't feeling very connected. I for sure was not feeling stimulated, fulfilled, or useful. And I was on several CSL committees, and then seemingly out of the blue, I was asked by the then chair of the Leadership Council if I would be willing to be appointed to fill a seat for somebody who had resigned. And even though it was something I had never, ever even considered, that inner yes, that gut yes, was actually pretty immediate. And as I look back, what I see was because I've been in this practice of oneness, my inner divinity recognized what would be fulfilling for me. And in that, I like to say, I have flunked retirement. And so far, anyway, I think at least happier for it. So then the opportunity to serve as chair came around. And if I hadn't been in that place of trusting something greater than my small self, this for sure I never would have considered. Again, a short story. I had been on the council for a very short period of time, and it was time to elect the new chair. The other one had been termed out. And so there I was just feeling like I didn't hardly know what was going on and very new. Someone came along, and I like to think of them as a fellow godling on the path, came along and planted a seed. And she said to me, "Are you thinking of running for chair?" I'm like, no. She said, you have 30 years experience in a center, you got tons of committee experience, you have a lot of historical memory of the organization, which was true because my husband had been spiritual leader for many years, so I'd kind of had that inside track. And then they said to me, "And you seem pretty grounded." I'm like, my first response, because it is a big responsibility, was again my small human self-reaction, no, I can't do that. But then, at the next council meeting, I was looking around the Brady Bunch squares on the Zoom screen, and this feeling rose up in me. It was not the thinking, it was nothing except that feeling. And I'm like, uh-oh, that's it. That's my higher self gut. Yes, oh, no. Rumi says, "The soul has been given its own ears to hear things the mind does not understand." Now, old habits die hard for sure. And again, I tried to argue. I'm sure there's somebody better out there. But I kept checking in. I did a lot of prayer. I did a lot of meditating. I did a lot of time with that. But for sure, that yes just came on. I put my name in, and then that yes was confirmed by a vote from the council. And there are still times when I'm going, holy moly. But you know, when my head gets scared, I go back to my heart, I go back to my divine self, I check in and I listen. And it is still a yes. And honestly, for the most part, I am loving it. And I love feeling fulfilled, and I love being able to continue to give back to a teaching which has given me so much. And I truly feel that that way that Rumi spoke about for me has appeared. And I'm happy to let you know that there are good things happening on the council. There has been a stabilizing of the organization, and we are truly moving into a time of what's next and growth, and how can we really maximize the value of this teaching in a world that I think dearly needs it. You know, and through it all, I have learned that there is something so powerful about doing what you think you can't do. I think there's a phrase from Jesus, you know, of my own self, I can do nothing. And so it's a lot about trust and going back and going back. And isn't that what this teaching truly offers us? A way to express spirit on earth. So who here has heard the phrase, change your thinking, change your life? Alrighty. And you know, that is a fabulous start for sure. But for me, I have found it has been exponentially more powerful to think of this as change where I'm living from, change my life. Which maybe isn't quite as catchy a phrase for sure, but moving from coming from that smaller human self and the world of effects, which is our thinking, if you ever think about that, to living from that truest first cause, spirit itself, is where I found the deepest transformation to happen. And you know, sometimes I think, in my humble opinion, sometimes we sell this teaching short. If we think it's just about thinking positively, if it's just about repeating some nice affirmations or just focusing on the good. Because, I mean, anybody done all that and kind of felt disappointed sometimes, just a little bit? Well, then where do we go? Unfortunately, I've seen too often, or me, I go to self-blame. I just didn't do it good enough. I just didn't do it right enough. And so what if our teaching is really more about increasing our awareness of who we really are, the divine right here as us, and then from that place, we find we are naturally aligned with our good, and it comes from that sense of our realization of our unity with all that is, and realizing truly that we are so much more than just separate manifestors of, what do they say, princes and parking spaces and something like that. I think Ernest Holmes, the founder of our teaching, said something somewhere about we don't create our good, we recognize it. And that's because, truly, it's already here. And what we can do is make ourselves available to it by being in alignment with it. And I have found it is not always comfortable, but it always feels right. And so with all of that, how about all the stuff that's happened in our world? You know, there's a lot going on out there. I heard somebody the other day say it's kind of like living in the junk drawer of life. Y'all have a junk drawer? My folks used to call it a Fibber McGee drawer. Anybody ever heard that? Oh, yay. You know, that drawer that's got kind of elastic bands and odds and sods and nails and screws and bits that you're keeping for you don't even know what it is anymore. Something that I've learned is when there is a lot going on, when there is a lot of junk, what we can be sure is that there is change afoot. And thank goodness for a teaching that offers us a faith, a philosophy, and a way of life to be with that change. Truly, Science of Mind offers us a way to presence ourselves in the true presence. And knowing and really deeply knowing that we are not separate from the divine, that we are it expressing life, is the profound truth that helps us through the junk and to that best future that I spoke of earlier. So underneath all of it, underneath the odds and the screws and the bolts and our stinking thinking, underneath the discord, underneath the stories that we tell ourselves, is a presence and a power and a life that is right here, right now, breathing us and beating our hearts without us having to give any of those things a single human thought. It's incredible when you think about it. And so this greater is guiding us through every single second of our lives. Our jobs is to trust it and to claim it and to know that there is no distance because it is us, as us, every single moment. And I have found as I continue to practice this, that not only am I finding my place in the universe, but also I'm finding its place in me. Totally said, you are not in the universe, you are the universe. So many years ago, BRS, before religious science, I thought there was only the world out there. Then I learned a few things, and then I thought it was me, all by myself. But as I've leaned into oneness, I have learned that I am actually the awareness of that essence made manifest. And from this place, for me, it's been a whole new way of being, literally out of the blue. So I want to tell you a story. Imagine a paintbrush lying on the table. That paintbrush feels dry, unused, uncertain. The brush might say to itself, I wish I could create beauty, but I don't know how. I'm not skilled enough. I don't have the colors. I don't have the vision. But the truth is, the brush was never meant to create alone. Its purpose is to be held by the artist. And when the artist lifts it, the brush effortlessly becomes a part of the masterpiece. It doesn't have to strain, it just needs to be willing. And in that same way, when we open ourselves to the divine artist, life paints through us. We become the brush through which spirit creates beauty in the world. We don't need to have it all figured out. We simply allow ourselves to be held. And so since leaning more into oneness, I have found myself less caught up in overthinking, more or less. I have been less judgmental. I have been more trusting and feeling more in the flow of life. And so the how, first, always is awareness. And then, even though they are not it, our practices of meditation, classes, spiritual mind treatment, especially the first step of treatment where we recognize there is only one, these are the tools that lead us to it. And then we trust we're going to get our legs, the way appears, and we get the privilege to be it in the world. Today, I want to invite all of us to live as if this oneness is the most truest thing about us, because it is. And this is the perfect time to allow ourselves to be the brush in the hands of the artist, to be expressions of the infinite, and in that, to walk each other home in oneness and beauty and peace and joy. And so it is.